Hello, everybody. Welcome to Truth Tellers Radio. I'm your host, J.M. Talbot. Today we have a very special guest. We have an author with us, Alan Paul Roberts. He's written a book called Exposed, The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything to Usher in a New World Order, in their own words. Welcome to the show today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. So great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Now, first of all, I want to tell people where they can get the book. And, folks, if you go check out his website for this book, you can get the first chapter free. So I wanted to let everybody know that up front. But, yes, please tell them how they can sign up for that and where they can go to find the book.
Sure. Yeah, the easiest way to get the book is to go to globalcollapsebook.com. And once you're there, there's links to get it on Amazon, or you can actually get it anywhere where online books are sold, just by the name The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything. So on the website, globalcollapsebook.com, there is a read link in the navigation. If you click the read link, you can sign up to read a chapter for free. It's what I call the first collapse chapter, about the first pillar of society that's under attack. And you can also hear for free the introduction to the book. I recorded it also as an audio book, and you can hear a sample of that as well. If you scroll down on the home page, you can see there's different ways to get a signed copy. You can actually get a single signed copy for about the same price as an unsigned copy. And you can get them in bundles of 3, 6, 12, and 18. And believe it or not, some people actually do that because they want to get out the word to the folks who just don't seem to get it in their lives, friends and family, who we all have that stress of people who just don't get it, and we want to wake them up.
Yeah.
This book's a great way to do that.
Yeah, no, I do believe that people do that because, I saw you on Richard Syrett's show, Strange Planet, and, he's a part-time host of Coast to Coast AM sometimes, and he struggles with getting views because of censorship. And so I know that struggle, and the only way we're going to help each other out is to help each other out. I mean, we literally have to support each other when we see somebody that's a truth teller out there putting out good information. We need to support them. We need to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to this stuff. So I hope people do actually go out and get the book. And, give it away at activist events and things like that. That would be wonderful. So to start us off, what would you say first prompted you to write The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything? And can you share the moment when you felt, this is it, I need to expose this?
Sure. So as I like to try to explain, just as a little bit of a quick background, I own a small business. I came up through the corporate world, up through sales and marketing and manufacturing and different jobs for mid-sized companies, traveled the world, started my own company then in 2011. I left the corporate world, started my own marketing firm. And as most small businesses are, I wear a lot of hats, and it's hard to get things done, and I don't have enough time to do everything that I need to get done in a day or a week, typically. So writing a book was not on the schedule at all. Maybe someday when I'm retired, I would write a book. I've had that thought, but I'm not there. And so what happened to me, what changed all that was in late April of 2024, when I woke up one morning at around 4 a.m. I was just laying in bed, no nightmare, nothing unusual. As I'm laying there getting ready to get up, I had this sudden flash, for lack of a better way to say this, of 6 pillars of society, American society, and also Western society, but in particular American society, that are under attack and in danger of coming down. And it's really hard to explain the nature of how fast this came to me. I mean, all 6 of these came to me in one single flash. Never had anything like this happen in my life. It was like an instant knowledge transfer, and it was clearer than anything I've ever experienced. Now, I didn't know what was being done. I just knew that for a fact it was being done, that all 6 of these pillars of society were being methodically worked on to bring them down. And I also had the sense that they were in different phases of collapse. They weren't coming down at the same time, but they were all methodically being worked on. So this blew me away. I didn't know what was going on. And I keep a paper and pen in the bathroom. I got up, wrote them down because it's around 4 a.m. and I'm going to forget them if I don't. So I wrote them down, and I tried to get back to sleep. You can imagine how distracted I was, So I'm thinking about these 6 collapse points, I call them. And within a couple minutes, I had 3 different collapse points, same kind of thing, in danger of coming down. And, man, I got up and I wrote those down. Try to go back to bed again, lay down, and then within a couple minutes, 2 more. Grand total of 11. And, they say 3 times is a charm. This time, like, I ripped the covers off, go into the bathroom, write it down, and, because I keep paper and pen in there, but wrote them down. And at this point, I'm thinking this has to be a God thing. This has to be, because it felt like it was coming from outside of me. Some of these collapse points were a big surprise to me. Like, I had never thought about them. And, and so, in my confusion, I guess you could say, I just say, like, God, what is going on? Why are you showing me this? Because I figured it had to be him. And, didn't get an answer. And then after a minute or two, I just thought again in my head, God, why are you showing me this? Do you want me to write a book? And if you want me to write a book, what's the title? And I couldn't even finish that thought, what's the title, when the title flashed, the whole title, the globalist plan to collapse everything to usher in a new world order. Just bang right there. And I thought that was so overwhelming, so powerful, and so clear that I instantly committed. It's like, okay, I'll take the time to research these 11 pillars of society, find the evidence that they're being worked on to bring them down, and somehow find the time to write a book. So that's where it happened.
That's amazing. For what it's worth, I'm a paranormal investigator. I'm a believer in God, and these things happen. I'm a musician too, and I often get that muse, and it hits you, and it's like, you're not writing this, and a lot of writers feel that way. It's a very common thing. To some people that might sound woo-woo, but I'm with you. And I've had similar experiences in my own life. Now, it being that it might be a spiritual battle, it makes me wonder what kind of resistance or pushback have you felt, either external or internal, when it comes to this? And what was the hardest part of the process for you as far as that's concerned, or just in general?
Yeah, I guess the biggest part of the resistance is actually just the way you get blocked everywhere. You can't really advertise. You get downplayed on social media. So as a marketing person myself, all my normal ways of marketing this failed terribly. I wasted a bunch of money because, I'm used to, as a marketer, you got to try things, you got to put the time in, put the money in. You got to have the courage to try things and spend the money up front. But everything I did failed. And it wasn't until I started working on getting on podcasts that is the one thing that actually works. It seems like this story, because buying a book is a heavy lift for a lot of people. Like, they don't want to read, they don't want to take the time. And the only way people become interested is if they really get it. And to get it, you got to hear the story. So the long-form interview and a podcast is the only place, or a radio show is the only place you're going to get that.
Right. And again, we all have to help each other. I'm at the point, even with my music right now, I am pre-censored on TikTok. They censor me first, then I have to appeal. I win the appeal, but by the time I win the appeal, the views have already been tanked, and because of the algorithm and whatnot. So they definitely fight every step of the way against this information, but that speaks to the truth of it. Now,
exactly.
Getting into your thesis a little bit. So you identify 11 pillars of society that are under attack. So national borders, banking and finance, food supply, faith. Which of those did you find to be the most under, the most advanced stage of collapse, and why?
in my opinion, from all the research, I would say the banking and finance pillar is at the most advanced stage. Now, until the new administration got in there, I might have said national borders because our country was being flooded. I mean, as most people know, out of control flooded, and with all the crime and everything and all the government spending that goes with that. But now that the border is closed, I would say for sure banking and finance, because most people have no idea that we are on a razor's edge with that. I mean, the banking system could come down so easily. The banks are in very poor condition and in danger of collapsing. I mean, they're just the moves by the Federal Reserve in the last year or two to change the interest rates all of a sudden from, almost zero to about 5%. That sent shockwaves through the banking system because these banks had been loading up on government treasury bills and treasury notes, putting their extra assets right there. And the value of those assets, a lot of people don't understand this, is directly tied to the interest rate that they throw off. So if you have a treasury note or treasury bill, let's just say it's $100,000, and it throws off 1% interest, it's worth $1,000 a year. I mean, that's the value of it, right? And that it throws off $1,000 at 1%. If the new ones throw off $5,000, like at 5%, they're throwing off $5,000. That $1,000 rate is 1/5 of the current rate. So the value of that treasury bill is actually 1/5. So say they spent $100,000 on it, it's now worth 20. And so if they have to cash that thing in to pay for people who are pulling their deposits, they have to convert, they have to get cash to give them because people are pulling their money out of the bank, or they need, they just need money because they're running out of, their job ended or something. Then they have to cash them in at a total loss, and it wouldn't take much of a run on the bank for banks to just collapse at an incredible pace. And then what would happen in that situation is the too big to fail banks, the 5 or 6, enormous banks, would end up buying them all at a discount, and we would be left with, those 5 or 6 banks controlling everything. And at that point, the power to produce like a central bank digital currency or a digital currency that's controlled by these few banks would be enormous. And then that leads to the next thing, all the control that comes with a central bank digital currency tied to a digital ID and all that.
Right. Now, one of your claims is that elites have deliberately set out to collapse these pillars and to usher in a so-called New World Order. Now, that implies intent, coordination, and a plan. How do you distinguish that from the idea of systemic failure, unintended consequences, or emergent instability?
Yeah, it's because they basically have planned these things for a long time, and in the book it gets into some of that. But you can go back to the 1970s, and they're talking about a lot of the things that are in here that they want to take down and weaken. It's pretty overwhelming when you actually see it, but just for example, they've been talking about population control and depopulation in subtle ways for a long time. There's in the 70s, the book The Limits to Growth came out, and they have code words. They have code words for a lot of the things that they want to implement. So they'll very seldomly come out and say depopulation is our goal, but they'll say things like the world has too many people. And, Bill Gates, for example, gave a TED talk that's linked to in the book through a QR code. So the book has 175 QR codes, and people, when I make a claim, I give you the QR code so you can see it for yourself. But in this example, Bill Gates in his TED Talk, which a lot of people know about this, but in his TED Talk, he comes right out and says, if we do a really good job with vaccines, and he lists a couple other things, we probably can reduce the world population by 10 to 15%. And that's like, picture the DJ record skip where the needle scratches. It's like, whoa, what did you just say in the same sentence?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is how it goes. They have their plans. Most people don't know about it, but they are in a way hidden in plain view. I mean, you can get them on the internet. For example, with the COVID crisis from 2020, the book has a QR code that'll take you to a thing they call Event 201, where they were doing a dry run on exactly what happened during the COVID crisis, the lockdowns, people resisting. They even had fake newscasts that sounded very much like the real newscasts that came out later. Right. This was sponsored by the World Economic Forum, and it went out in 2019. The World Economic Forum, with Bill Gates also involved, published in 2019 before the event actually happened. And it was, you would have to say these people were clairvoyant to get it, to nail it. They even used the word COVID.
Right.
So, that's just an example of how their plans really are kind of hidden in plain view.
Yeah, absolutely. The stuff with Bill Gates, we've on my 9/11 Debunkers blog, 911debunkers.blogspot.com, we take on a lot of the debunking arguments. And sometimes with my questions you hear, you'll see I'm playing devil's advocate. But that's how I think we get to the real truth of things and show people that we really do want the truth. That we understand what the people who critique us think, but it very often doesn't work the other direction. They do not know what our opinions even are on these things. And yeah, you
Sure.
could easily look at Bill Gates' statements and you can try to explain them away, but when you look at them in a larger context, how, there's been infiltration of the Bilderberg meetings where they were talking about they want to directly decrease population, and they were talking about wars in that context. And so when you look at it like within that context, it seems a lot more clear what Bill Gates is talking about. Now, on your site, you ask, why is Bill Gates the largest owner of farmland in the U.S., and why does he want to cut down 70 million acres of western forests? Can you walk us through how you documented those claims and how you connect them logically to your collapse framework?
Sure. So, the largest owner of farmland, like 70 million acres of forest that he wants to cut down and bury the trees. It's just amazing. But if you think about everything he's involved with and kind of connect that all together. So we talked about, how he's behind, for number one, his father was, involved with Planned Parenthood, which is basically, if you go back far enough in their history, they were about eugenics and population reduction of certain types of people within society. Margaret Sanger, that history. But if you think about Bill Gates and how he has spoken many times, not just in that TED Talk, of population reduction, and then you connect that also with the fact that you're talking about vaccines, which not only kill a certain percent of the population, but they harm, maim, and reduce the lifespan of the population. And I would argue, especially with the last, vaccines from 2020 forward, that they reduce the fertility rate. So it reduces the future population by reducing today's fertility rate, pretty much across the world wherever they were taking, these vaccines. So you have the population coming in that reduction coming from that angle. And then if you add to that he is taking farmland offline by being the largest owner of farmland, but it's not productive farmland, at least not at this point. So it seems like he's trying to take it offline. And, you look at, he's also involved in this fake meat. He's trying to get people to quit eating, regular meat, which is a huge source of protein. We all need it. Taking that offline to get us to eat fake meat, eat the bugs, this kind of thing for bug protein, which is not healthy. so it's basically to reduce the health, to reduce the procreation capability of mankind, to basically reduce the population. And even to the point where he's involved with releasing these genetically modified mosquitoes in Florida, places like Florida. He's involved with that too. I mean, he seems like hell-bent, determined to get that vaccine in us one way or another. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it ties together. I mean, the book also later talks about the Georgia Guidestones, which are pretty mysterious. They've been destroyed, as a lot of people know.
Yeah.
But the Georgia Guidestones are pretty much like the 10 Commandments of the globalists. And commandment number 1 on the 10 Commandments of the Georgia Guidestones, or the 10 talking points, you could say, is reduce the world population to a manageable and sustainable level of 500 million people. Yeah, so that would mean 7.5 billion people need to go away to get to that level.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ted Turner famously said we needed a 90% population reduction. He didn't say how we would achieve that, but I mean, you can't imagine that coming through anything but nefarious means, really.
Yeah.
And to get back to the source, I mean, you use 170 QR codes throughout the book, so that's pretty innovative. That's pretty neat thing that you're doing there. So you've got links to videos, news reports, documents. How did you select your sources, and how do you verify the authenticity of them and the relevance of them, and avoid confirmation bias and things like that?
Yeah, it's tough. One of the premises of the book is that there's such a disinformation campaign and has been for a long time in the major media that we have this blind spot where we tend to believe that certain sources are more reliable than they really are, and we don't recognize that often they're disinformation sources. And that's the reason that the first page of the book is the quotation from 2 CIA directors to that point. The first one is William Casey, CIA director from 81 to 87. And he says, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." And, in case you think that's a one-off statement from a crazy CIA director, there's another CIA director, William Colby, 73 to 76. The Central Intelligence Agency owns everyone of any significance in the major media. So they control the media, which means they control the narrative, and they define success as deceiving the American people. So because they control the media, New York Times, you name any, really big media source, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post. I mean, basically all the sources that people for decades have kind of felt were like the de facto leaders, they're pretty much corrupt and heavily influenced by the CIA. So, long answer to your question, you have to go to alternative sources. And it is a very careful process where you have to prove it to yourself. You have to figure out who you trust. And so you have to listen to them enough to really begin to trust them and connect the dots with other people who are saying things. But there's no source you can go out there of official alternative news media, trustworthy sources. So it is a difficult thing. And actually, to your point, I was fooled by one video that I came across from the World Economic Forum that I found out later was a deep fake. And on my website, there's a link. It's called Edits. And I'm right out there with it. Like, I was fooled. At the time I saw it, it really seemed like it was a whistleblower. And it at the time I looked it up, there were not other websites coming up like against that. So this had gone on through the alternative media for a couple months at least before all this came out. And so as soon as I discovered that it actually was an edited video, I put out a disclaimer, right away on that. But that's the only one so far out of the 175. And, I've sold so far about over 1,700 copies. And that's the only pushback I got was on that one point so far.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And your methodology seems very solid when it comes to that. There's a lot of people, they never want to admit they've been fooled or made a mistake. And that's going to happen in research like this. It goes without saying. But as far as the media, you can go back to the countering criticism of the Warren Commission, report, back when they originally suggested, at least, if implied, if not directly said, to use conspiracy theorists in a derogatory manner to attack people as being financially motivated, so on and so forth. And they had a lot of media assets back then. Then we had the JFK files came out, and I think they were pointing some of the documents to like 40 assets that the CIA had in the media. And there's a book called 50 Things You're Not Supposed to Know, and they show government documents to show that the CIA commits 100,000 serious crimes every year. And you were talking about one crazy, head of the CIA. I think they're all crazy because working for an organization that has that much bad stuff going on, that's, you have to call that out.
I agree. Yeah. And how many people even know that?
Right.
So that the power of the book is because it gradually pulls you into this. It gradually opens your eyes, and it doesn't try to do it so fast that somebody that's unfamiliar with this is going to just put it down immediately. It tries to establish some easy early wins, and then it makes it easier to then say, okay, it seems like it has enough credibility. I'm open to the next claim. Let me just, let me see the research. Let me see the videos. Let me see the documents that we're linking to. And I have a friend who's an older woman, wasn't familiar with any of this stuff. I gave her a copy of the book. She read it, and she was blown away. She was like, wow, I never knew about any of this stuff. But now that I understand what's going on, I have a bunch of changes I need to make in my life. And she has been making them. And so it's that kind of thing. Like an easy early win is videos that expose Fauci lying about the masks or having 3 different positions. Masks don't work. There's no point in using them. That was one position. And then we need masks. We have to use masks. Masks are important. And then, wear 2 masks. And, so he's all over the board. This is the same guy who's supposed to be, he claims to be the science. There's another video where he says, I am the science, and yet
right.
He's got 3 different positions on the same topic. Obviously, he's a manipulator. And so we get those kind of wins early on. It kind of opens the door to, the next thing.
Reminds me of the Emperor, I am the Senate in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right.
So Global Collapse. Yeah. GlobalCollapseBook.com is where people can go to get the free chapter and buy the book. Now, let's talk about what the implications are here a little bit. So if your thesis is correct, what does day-to-day life look like in the world that you anticipate after the collapse of the 11 pillars?
Okay, so this is like a struggle because, on one end we can get completely what they call black-pilled, where you give up hope because you're convinced it's all coming down and there's nothing you can do about it. On the other extreme are the blissfully ignorant that know nothing about this and are just kind of skipping along, whistling in the dark. But in the middle is where you become aware of this and you decide you want to push back against it. And pushing back against it is spreading the word in such a way that enough people not only say no to this, but say hell no. Like, I am not going to watch this happen. And a small example of a win like that happened in the last year is when all this pushback came out against DEI. And it started with Trump, saying DEI is officially out of the government. We will no longer recognize this concept of 100 genders or 50 genders or whatever it is. And they started pushing back against all kind of forms of DEI and that kind of political correctness. and they purged it from government. It's been purged from the military, and a lot of people caught on to that, and the movement was so strong that even companies started getting rid of their policies. I'm sure you're aware of this, many of your listeners are, where they just kind of flipped the DEI policies out the door, fired their HR person in charge of DEI all over the place. And so we saw this, and it was all PR. It was all awareness. And people just said, I've had enough. Even comedians are like, I've had enough, And you can see like the late night show, some of these people either losing their jobs or losing their audience. People are done for the most part. So that's what awareness is. And that's my vision, is that, through the book, I'll be able to do my part to help amplify the awareness that's out there and growing, but amplify it and try to find a way to reach the people who are, for the most part, kind of clueless about this, and get them to get to that hell no stage too. So in the best of all worlds, we're able to slow it down and stop some or all of it, right? Now, if it all does come crashing down, then in the back of the book, there's a section on prepping, on different forms of preparation, how to protect yourself financially, how to protect your food supply, how to protect your privacy. So it actually gets into that. And, I just make the statement in the book. It's like, look, people have all kinds of ideas on preparation. You can buy huge books on it. I'm just giving you sources so that if you decide you want to do it, I'm making it easy for you to find the stuff and get it done, through the QR code. So, you can just kind of link to everything and buy it and get it done if you want to do that, or get moving on it. But, I think in the worst possible scenario, it turns into a dystopic society, a lot like China is today. Possibly worse, where everything's tracked, where you have a total lack of freedom to travel, where you have a social credit score that determines what you're allowed to do, where you're allowed to shop, how far you're allowed to travel, where your kids can go to school, what kind of education they can get. It's tyranny, and there's certainly the potential for that. And it is what the globalists want. China is their model for the world. And, it's not just China where things are getting crazy. If you look at Australia, you look at parts of Europe, the tyranny is really on the rise in these countries.
Yeah, there's people being arrested for Facebook posts. It doesn't get any crazier than that, really.
Yeah.
But you do spell out what successful resistance looks like then, and you talk about how people can prepare physically and mentally and spiritually, and that's very good work that you're doing. Now, with current events like pandemics, supply chain disruptions, energy crisis, social media surveillance, how does that all fit into your framework? Are they symptoms of the collapse, tools of the plan, or something else?
Yeah, I think they're all tools being used. It's because it is a globalist plan, and you have organizations like the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the different agencies within the United Nations, the banking system, the global banking system, and the power that these independent bankers hold at the very top. Their control over the corporate world, and how very few companies in the end own all the other companies. How the ultimate wealth is controlled by just a fraction of 1% of the people. They have accumulated a network of wealth and power and influence and control over much of the media, not as much as they used to have, because the alternative media is growing much stronger. But, that when you have the media, the banking system, most of the big corporations, that alone allows you to make long-term plans and actually execute them, because you can pay people off. You've got the so-called scientists, a lot of them in your pocket. And when these billionaires, multi-billionaires, all kind of get on the same page with the plan, they have enormous power to kick it off. So for the most part, I do think it is planned and well coordinated.
Right. Now, if you were to address some of the most common misconceptions or misunderstandings you encounter about your book and your thesis, what are they and how do you address them?
Let's see. I think the most common misunderstandings are the ones that we kind of think of when people say, "Oh, that's tinfoil hat, that's conspiracy theory." I think the hardest things for people to believe are, the whole 9/11 thing, which I know you get into, but that was the entry point to the surveillance state in this country. That opened the doors wide open, and that was planned in advance. That was not a byproduct of honestly trying to just go after foreigners who were trying to take down our country by hitting, the World Trade Center towers. It wasn't like that. This was planned in ahead. The Patriot Act was ready to go and waiting. So that's a tough one for people to believe. Like, would my government really do this? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. Elements of the government would really do that. They would execute a plan to gain control, to introduce a surveillance state at a level never before thought of, by having an event that scared people so badly that they're willing to give up their freedom for security. So that's a tough one. Another one that's really tough for people to get their brain around is what's being done to the food supply all over the world to reduce it. Fires in food plants. There's a section of the book where I take you through the number of fires at food plants in 2021 versus the first half of 22. All of 21, there were 10 fires in total, which sounds bad enough. I mean, these are major fires at major food facilities. There were 10 of them in all of 2021. In the first 6 months of 2022, there were 90. So it went from an average of less than one a month to an average of 15 a month, just within a period of 1 year. And it's been going on from there. And it's not just a U.S. thing. It's also a European thing. All of Western Europe, I mean, they are reducing the food supply by the so-called green movement, greenhouse gases. You got to reduce the number of cattle. You can't use as much fertilizer. So they're taking thousands and thousands of farms offline all over Europe. And at the same time, they're reducing the ability to grow food by using fertilizers. And so you have all these. It's kind of like death by 1,000 cuts, except some of these cuts are enormous cuts that kind of all work together. I mean, our news, unfortunately, in the U.S., our international news really is poor, really poor. But if we understood what was going on and just the pushback that's happening in Europe, the pushback in terms of the protests in places like not just Australia, but Germany, France, Spain, Belgium. I mean, the UK, major pushback by the people, but they have this growing police state that is becoming more and more dystopic and more people's freedoms are being crushed. What they took for granted as a free society, is ending for them, at some level. And of course, the mass migration, we had 4 years of it under the last administration that were totally out of control. But in Europe, they've never gotten it under control, and it's happening today still. It started in around 2011, and it's just a takeover of Europe. The individual nations, except for a couple of them, have so much immigration that you would hardly recognize their society anymore. It's just being overrun, diluted, and changed from the ground up. And at the same time, crime is on the rise, and regular people were being denied justice, and the invaders are getting a break on everything and allowed to commit crimes, allowed to even rape and things like that. And the person who complains against that ends up going to jail longer than the rapist who caused the problem. So it's hard to believe, but we need to be up on foreign news. I would really encourage everybody to spend some time and get acclimated to foreign news services so you understand the global nature of what they're trying to do, which is very similar to what they were trying to do in the invasion, with the crime in the cities, with the blue state policies of allowing thefts of up to $1,000 without it being a crime. Steal it as many times a day as you want from as many places, as long as each one's under $1,000. Nobody gets convicted. Nobody goes to jail. It's just lawlessness and tyranny on the rise.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard. When you look at all that, if you don't see a plan there, then the only thing you can see other than that is extreme incompetence. But
yes.
There's a system where people feel despair. There's not, there's areas that are very, very poor, and then you allow crime to fester in those areas. It doesn't make sense for both of those things to be happening at the same time. It's like people talk about pressure from above, pressure from below. You just make people just be in total despair about things, and then obviously when you're feeling like that, you'll allow things to happen that you would not normally allow. I think there was a quote from Henry Kissinger or Rockefeller, one of them back in the day, that, one day that people will beg for troops in the street, whereas now they would never want that. But what is something that gives you the most hope in this? Like, is there a certain person or just the overall movement that gives you the most hope that we can actually fight back adequately against these things? And just to back up real quick with the 9/11 stuff, I do think when people get their heads around one event like that in particular, I think it leads into, believing this overall thesis more. And you can go to things like, there's an article, 33 conspiracy theories that were proven to be true, 42 false flag attacks that were admitted to. You have Operation Gladio, where NATO and the CIA, they carried out bombings for decades and blamed them on groups, on other groups. And that's admitted. They sat down and admitted these things. There were hearings about it. And the media, yes, that's why people don't know about these things. They absolutely should. But to go back to that question, what is one of the biggest things that gives you hope right now?
Yeah, there's a few things. At the most basic level for me, the reality that this was revealed to me in the way that it was through these 11 pillars, and how clear it was, and how incredible it was to have that happen to me, made me feel like it's being shown to me for a reason. And I'd like to kind of bring people to who know the story in the Bible of like Jonah and the whale. Jonah's running from God because God wants to send him to the most wicked city at the time, which was Nineveh, which was an enormous city. I think it's 3 days or 7 days to walk from one end to the other. So in its day, it was enormous. And God wants to send him there, and Jonah runs from God because he's afraid to do it. And, he goes onto the ship. There's this tremendous storm, and, the guys on the ship are all superstitious too. They're thinking he angered, one of the gods got angry. What's going on? Jonah confesses, and he says, well, I'm running from God. So they throw him overboard in the hopes that their gods, so to speak, are going to give them a break and stop the storm. They throw him overboard to get swallowed by the whale. 3 days later, I think it was, it spits him out, and he finally says, okay, and he goes into Nineveh, and he's proclaiming the message. 40 days and Nineveh is going to be destroyed. 39 days, and then from the king on down, they all repent, and Nineveh is not destroyed. That's a long way of saying, I believe this was shown to me not to predict the future, but to wake people up so that they'll push back, and so this won't happen. All right, so that gives me hope that there's a bigger reason for this. But the other things that give me hope is our system of government, where the states act as a counterbalance to federal power. We saw this during the COVID crisis when Florida opened up and basically put the lie to the story that you had to be indoors on a lockdown, because even with their old population, very old compared to most states, aging population, they fared no worse than anybody and better than a lot of them. But that was Governor DeSantis basically saying, no, we're not doing this. We're not going along with your plans. And then a lot of other governors started, joining in on that. And that broke the power of the federal lie that was going on, that control point. And so that system gives me hope. The alternative media and the way that the word is getting out, big examples would include, like Joe Rogan, and just the platform itself opening up more to free speech, not totally, but night and day to where it was, and that then enabling people to get the word out, the truth out. That gives me a lot of hope. And also just the hope that we can get this to a tipping point where people will just say no, and together we can push back and just stop it from happening, or at least slow it down or minimize the damage.
Well, assuming we're able to do that, what do you think, what is a mainstream media that you think future historians will look back and laugh at the most?
Well, I think they would laugh at how the major television media were all singing the exact same tune, playing the exact same tune, same story, it just in lockstep with one another, and how obviously opposite of what our founders intended that whole thing is when they're basically captured and controlled. And saying a narrative that they know isn't true. I mean, the most obvious one was the Russia narrative. They knew it wasn't true. The FBI at the time knew it wasn't true. They knew he wasn't an agent. It was all an excuse to be able to spy on him for other purposes and to try to curb his power. So this is my belief, that the media doesn't hate Trump because of his style. The media and the globalists who control much of the media hate Trump because of his policies. It's about policies. And many of those policies are anti-globalist. They're nationalist. For example, pulling us out of the World Health Organization, pulling us out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, basically going before the UN and saying, it's countries dealing with countries for what's best for their country, getting out of this multilateral trade agreement with the World Trade Organization and making deals country by country, and being vocal about it, that this is what's best for countries to work out things in their own interests, working together in deals. So, that gives me hope. And I think, looking back, hopefully some honest future historian will be able to say the United States went through a period where they forgot who they were and they abandoned their founding principles, and hopefully they woke up. Hopefully this is a story of a true great awakening where we actually come back from the brink, just like we did during the Civil War. I mean, we almost destroyed the country, but it came back. So hopefully we can come back again.
Yeah. Just to speak to globalism real quick, a lot of people, they have this view of like kumbaya, and they feel sorry for people. And I understand people that are in bad situations in other countries. And on an individual basis, I might understand what they do. But as an overall view, we have to view our country differently than we have sympathies for individual people. I mean, if the consolidation of power continues the way it is, we won't have anywhere to run to. There won't be a beacon on the hill that is the United States now. If they bring everybody down to third world status, there'll be nowhere to run. We can't leave the planet. maybe Elon Musk will make it to Mars, but I'm not getting off this place that we're at anytime soon. So, absent death. So yeah, I think people need to look at it in a different context than they do, and I try to express that through some of the music I do. You're talking about World Health Organization and all these different groups. My ex-wife was an RN, and I remember when she was going through college, I would look at the paper she was writing and help her out with the research a little bit, and they would only allow that one source, World Health Organization, for her to write all her papers as if they were infallible. And we learned from the COVID crisis that wasn't so. They were wrong about a lot of things. They were wrong about things that I brought up and had a YouTube channel taken from me that was monetized and doing well. Susan Wojcicki, she's boosted and crispy, I like to say these days. She's R.I.P., or God bless her soul. But she took a lot of people's livelihoods away and believed in these narratives that I think ultimately killed her. And so it's just very sad that some of the minions themselves too, they get caught up in this and lose their lives over things that they think are true, that aren't. And so yeah, I think looking back, that the thought that we would ever have to fight for free speech like we've had to. When I was younger, I thought, George Carlin, the 7 dirty words you can't say on television, things like that was
right.
What the fight for free speech was. And now that seems so minuscule, so childlike in comparison to what we're dealing with now. But maybe we live in interesting times. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, his other rant, it's a big club and you ain't in it. That rant,
right?
It's amazing how accurate that was and how ahead of his time he was on that. How clearly he saw the government control, and how it's how they all work together for their own interests. He didn't take it the whole way, but he certainly saw a lot, given how far back he was seeing it.
Yeah, he was actually asked about 9/11 by some activists he didn't know he was on camera. He realized, halfway talking with them, and he goes, "Oh, you're filming me?" He goes, "Oh, well, now you know," because what he said was, "We don't investigate ourselves in this country." He said it would be like the Kennedy thing. It'd be like everything. We don't investigate ourselves in this country. But to that point, was that cynicism on his end, or there's some truth to it, or what do we do about that? I've often thought like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission on some of these issues would be a good way to go. Give some people immunity, get them to be able to speak. I mean, these are probably some of the more lofty goals, but what do you think of ideas like that?
Well, to the extent we could pull it off, that certainly would help. But I hate to say this because it sounds heavy-handed, but I believe that with these corrupt district attorneys who were put in by a lot of them by George Soros and his organization and others like him. So we've got these district attorneys that won't prosecute crime. We have judges, a subset of judges who are totally corrupt. I'm concerned that and you've got one party that wants to hold the other party hostage and not release the budget. I mean, we're in a territory that is getting uncomfortably close to a third world country where the corruption hits a tipping point and you cannot operate normally anymore. I personally think that there is a pretty good chance that somebody's going to have to up the game, pull what they call the nuclear option in the Senate, where you only need 51 votes to get things through, which would be a terrible thing for the long run, but it could save us in the short run. And if we don't get saved in the short run, there isn't any long run anyway. But I think it could end up being, mass arrest of corrupt people. It could be a government run temporarily by the military in order to pull this off. And again, I hate to say it, but I think the corruption is so intense now that the normal rules don't work anymore. That there isn't good faith. The Senate is no longer a body that will debate honestly. It's become two warring camps, and especially I would argue on the left side, they absolutely won't budge. They vote as a block. There's no dissent. and they want to get control back. They want 1.5 trillion to pay for Medicare and food and everything else for illegals. They've got their slush funds. There's just so much corruption. Elon uncovered some of it, but it's two warring camps, and I just think it's going to take a heavy hand by somebody to pull us back to a system that is based on integrity once again. I hope I'm wrong about that, but that is how I see it.
Yeah, and me ideologically, I'm a little bit center right on a lot of issues. I'm kind of centrist. I do think Trump is better than Kamala would have been by far, but he's not without his faults. What do you think of his handling of Epstein or the Charlie Kirk situation?
Yeah, I personally think that somebody probably got to him. I think he genuinely wanted to release the Epstein files at one point. I have two thoughts on that. One possibility, and I think it has some credibility, I think it's probably likely, is that, the Democrat administration was in power for so long with those files in the FBI that they stuffed it with a lot of false information, and Trump probably learned that there's information in there that was false about him. And having gone through the whole Russia thing in the last administration and how it just tied his hands in being able to get things done, I think there's a good chance he just said, the hell with it, we're not going there. I got things to get done, and I'm not going to let that happen again. I think the other possibility is that once he learned who all these people were who were connected to Epstein, that there were so many in the banking system, foreign leaders, our own CIA, our own internal agencies, that there was so much corruption that if you exposed it all, it would have the potential to just basically bring down the country, bring down the banking system. If all these people, including internationally, are all outed at once, I think it could be uncontrollable. That's a possibility. So you said Epstein, and what was the other one? Oh,
Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed there. I really thought that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were going to be able to clean things up, and it seems to me that somebody got to them because they're not being themselves. I don't understand that one, but that is a big disappointment too. But
yeah, I've been looking at the reporting of Candace Owens on the subject, and some people say behind the scenes that she's actually talking to Erica Kirk, and that Erica Kirk is putting one face forward and behind the scenes doing something else. And I actually hope that is what's going on.
I hope so.
But yeah, there was searches from DC and Israel of almost everything before the shooting. The shooter's name, the hospital, the surgeons. They immediately came in and stuccoed the ceilings, and everybody's debating, like, was it shot from the back, this and that. And I think you get lost in magic bullet debates and no plane theories and 9/11, that kind of stuff. There's stuff that's so suspicious and pointing in certain directions to where you don't have to debate, the angle of the bullet and stuff like that. But I think they try to get people lost in the fog of things where they can push a lot of crap theories out there and nobody really knows what's going on with certain things. You have the guy who said he shot bin Laden, but is that story true? But he goes on Piers Morgan and says that's an exit hole, not an entrance hole. And you're going, okay, but I don't know if I trust you. Do you know what I mean? It's like from the place that it's coming from. It's like so, but yeah, those searches, and apparently these searches come up before all these major shootings, where people are searching out in D.C. and Israel or one or the other. They're searching out, the name of the shooter, and which has never been searched before, or regional Utahs and hospitals in Utah. And
it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. But if there's one good thing that happened from this, I would say is probably good, is that people are questioning whether a certain foreign government has undue influence over our own government. And I think it's about time. I mean, just what's been uncovered in the number of dual citizenships within our Congress and, our Senate, our House, the number of people who are leaders, political leaders, and in positions of extreme influence have dual citizenship with another country that I don't really want to mention, but you know what I'm telling you.
No, yeah. Well, I may have already mentioned it in a different context, but yes. And to be afraid that we should even be able to talk about these things speaks for itself. It really does.
That's true. That is true.
And the thing is, though, you would think, why were they so sloppy with these searches? And it's made me wonder if there's an intelligence war going on. Some people are throwing other people under the bus, perhaps. And so that might be a good thing. We might be witnessing an intelligence war right out in public, where you have British and CIA kind of warring with, other agencies out there. So that's one possible explanation for what we're seeing. But you got to remember, we are an intelligence agency too. We are just uncentralized intelligence. But I've heard CIA agents say that basically, if you're a good researcher, you can find almost anything they can find. Almost, not everything, but we can connect a whole heck of a lot of dots out there.
Hiding in plain view. Yep, so true. Yeah, the thing that disappoints me just real quickly about all this, what we're talking about right now, is although these things matter, they're still not the things that matter the most. I mean, the economy, crime, the food supply, just the nature of our country, the level of corruption, all these things matter actually way more, in my opinion. And, but these things are so juicy that many of us are focused on that we just can't see past it. And I feel like we're getting played almost, like, do this so that you can't have your eyes on the thing that really matters the most, that'll help save your nation, stop it from going under.
Yeah, that's always one of the games being played, I think. But like the health issues, I think health matters to everybody. If you don't have health, you don't have anything. I've got a website devoted to exposing those type of issues. It's welcome to health.blogspot.com. A play on the words "welcome to hell." But yeah, there is the military industrial complex, but there's the medical industrial complex as well. So that is a huge part of the picture, which I think that you have accurately put into your thesis. Again, tell everybody where they can get the book and any other information you want to give out before we close out.
Sure, yeah. Go to globalcollapsebook.com. If you click on the buy tab, you can buy the book in single signed copy, a set of 3, 6, 12, or even 18. My hope is that people will be motivated to get the word out there, motivated to share the information with other people.
Take it to the local politicians.
Local politicians, your mayor, the people in power. Share the book with them. It really is a book that has the power to open the eyes of people who just don't know much about this. But even if you do know a lot about it, it gives you 175 QR codes. So these are links that you can share. It's almost like a research book that you can use to jump into any one particular topic. On the front end, it gets into what is globalism, who are the globalists, what are they trying to achieve, and how much of it have they achieved so far. And then in the middle, it's the 11 collapse points and what's going on with each of them. And on the back end, it's coping. It's, coping spiritually, mentally, physically, building up mental resilience, and actually taking steps to prepare and protect yourself and your family. So easy to read. The QR codes are in there. It's written in a very conversational style. It's not one of these books where you read the same paragraph 2 or 3 times to figure it out. It's plain, easy to read. And it's got graphics, a lot of fun graphics in it too.
I love good pictures with my book.
Yeah. As somebody said, it's like a pop-up book for adults.
Very cool.
But it is easy to read.
Conspiracy pop-up book with proof, with receipts.
Exactly. So it's a heavy subject on one level, but on another way, it makes it almost kind of enjoyable because there's some humor to it, and the videos kind of help you get a break from it. And then on the website, if you scroll to the bottom of the page, there's the social media links there as well. So. Check it out if you can at globalcollapsebook.com. If you can help me by buying a copy and spreading the word, that would certainly make my day.
Nice. And I love that you put humor in there. That's one thing they can never take away from us. They say that demons feed on fear. I have a image of artwork that I made for one of my videos, and it says, "Laugh now, laugh later." instead of laughing out cry later. And it shows a demon behind the person who's laughing with his head in his hand, going like, if I can't make you fearful and sad about all this, I'm not, what am I doing? Like, I'm not doing my job. So yeah, keep your joy through all of this. And yeah, sometimes you got to use humor. And when trying to fight censorship, in my videos, for instance, I have to use symbology and metaphor and art more than like memes and things like that. If I give them anything to go on, they will censor me. But they can't just censor the music by itself, and they can't just censor non-explicit art. So that's one way that I fight back. But so I appreciate you putting some humor in there.
Well, hey. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say, speaking of the humor, there's also a mug that you can buy on there. Where the one side of the mug, it's on the media manipulation chapter, where there's a bull with the word media written across it, and there's a pile behind the bull, which we know what that is, and this is a symbol of the mainstream media. On the other side of the mug, there's like a Superman, and on his chest it says alternative media. So it's just the two sides of the mug are the two medias, and that's all taken from the book as well with the artwork, but it's just a conversation starter and just another way to kind of poke a little humor at the crappy quality of the mainstream media.
Very cool. So they can get that mug at the same site they can get the book at?
Yep, globalcollapsebook.com. Yep.
All right. Well, hey, man, thank you for joining me. It's been a very enlightening conversation, and I hope people will run out and get that book and give it to your local politicians or other activists. And with that,
Thanks
I will bid you good night.
Thank you so much, John. Have a good evening yourself, and look forward to talking to you again sometime.
All right. Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.